Ambassador for Climate Action, Ravi Menon, distinguished guests, good morning, and thank you all for coming for the official launch of the Singapore Pavilion at COP30. I'm Joanne from the Ministry of Trade and Industry Singapore, and I'll be your MC for today. Over the next 2 weeks, this pavilion will be a gathering space for partners from all around the world to share ideas, spark collaborations, and advance collective climate action. This year's pavilion theme, Interwoven Purpose, Regenerating Tomorrow, captures the spirit of this shared journey. It reflects how our actions, partnerships, and ambitions are interwoven towards a shared goal to regenerate a more sustainable and resilient future for all. To begin our ceremony, we are honored to present a welcome address by Minister for Sustainability and the Environment and Minister in charge of Trade Relations, Ms. Grace Fu.
Dear friends, Bom dia! Welcome to the opening of the Singapore Pavilion at COP30. The pavilion is dedicated to all of you, all of us, for collective action. Because at its heart, the COP process is about collective effort. No party, no country, big or small, can do this alone. The Brazilian COP presidency has called this the global multi-role, collective action through shared purpose and mutual support that will transform communities. And we want to bring this spirit to the Singapore Pavilion through collective commitment, collective progress, and collective action. Now, more than ever, we need strong collective commitment from the world on climate action. No country will be able to insulate itself if temperature continues to rise. All of us should affirm our commitment to multilateralism and the Paris Agreement. Singapore has pledged our 2035 nationally determined contribution to further reduce emissions. Our target is backed by policies under the Singapore Green Plan. They include deploying at least 2 gigawatt peak of solar earlier than 2030, with over 1.7 gigawatt peak already installed, and over 60% of our buildings now greened, putting us on track towards 80% by 2030. And so we urge all parties to submit credible and ambitious 2035 NDCs. Doing so is a collective act of resolve, a signal that we remain on course towards a net zero future. Second, we need to accelerate collective progress. There has been progress, but it is not enough. 10 years after the Paris Agreement, there remains a persistent gap between ambition and delivery. Global emissions continue to rise, and the 1.5-degree goal appears more remote. And we are told that the planet has reached its first climate tipping point. The livelihoods of millions of people are being impacted. We are warned that other tipping points are real possibilities, such as the drying of the Amazon and the collapse of the marine ecosystem. The window for us, humanity, is rapidly closing. Each year of delayed action makes it harder and more costly to transform and adapt. COP30 must be the COP where we make progress. And collective action is the reason for the Singapore Pavilion at COP30. This is the platform where we hope to bring actions across governments, across the public, private, and people sectors, and across people of all countries. On G2G cooperation, Singapore has signed Article 6 implementation agreements with 10 partner countries, aligning all with a common vision of building a new source of finance through the carbon markets that's robust, impactful, and of high integrity. On public, private, and people collaboration, we are glad to share the progress on FAST-P. The Green Investment Partnership has raised US $510 million with US $51 million from the Singapore government. On people and knowledge partnerships, our third National Climate Change Study released the latest climate change projections through its free 3 portal, making this information available to all communities around the world. Singapore stands ready to contribute fully at COP30. Because climate action is not about what any one country can achieve alone, but we can achieve together. The Singapore Pavilion is the platform for all of you, all of us, to participate fully in climate action so that we can progress towards a more sustainable, inclusive, and resilient world.
Thank you, Minister Grace Fu, for that message, reaffirming Singapore's commitment to working hand in hand with partners around the world to accelerate our global climate efforts. Next, it is my pleasure to invite Ambassador for Climate Action, Ravi Menon, on stage to deliver his opening remarks for the Singapore Pavilion. Ambassador, please.
Good morning and welcome to the launch of the Singapore Pavilion at COP30 in Belém, Brazil. This is dreadfully hot. So with your permission, I'm going to take off my jacket and all the gentlemen, please feel free to do likewise. The ladies, I shan't recommend, I leave it to you. Whatever makes you comfortable. We don't want a heat exhaustion case here at the pavilion. This has not been an easy year for climate action. Governments and businesses around the world are grappling with competing priorities, from trade disruptions to geopolitical tensions to energy security concerns. With climate taking a back seat, people are concerned about the climate, but it's not top of mind. But time and tide wait for no man, and nature's clock is ticking away. Global temperatures are continuing to increase. You're experiencing it firsthand. Sea levels are rising faster than in the last 3,000 years. The polar ice caps are melting faster than expected, and glaciers around the world are retreating at record pace. So climate change is already happening. Lives and livelihoods are already being impacted. It will only get much worse. The climate crisis that we ignore today will be the defining crisis of tomorrow. Governments and businesses will be forced to act to decarbonize, but it will be a disorderly transition towards a carbon-constrained and climate-impaired world. Singapore is staying the course on climate action. We want to reduce our emissions as part of global efforts. Although Singapore accounts for only 0.1% of global emissions, every country must do its part, and so will we. But it goes beyond that. By reducing our emissions, we are also preparing our economy to thrive in a carbon-constrained future. And more importantly, as a global trade and financial hub, we want to catalyze climate action beyond Singapore, to work with others to facilitate global decarbonization and support climate adaptation. In short, climate action is the necessary thing to do, the smart thing to do, and the right thing to do. The Singapore Pavilion will feature how we are supporting global climate action by catalyzing climate finance and strengthening climate resilience. Let me start with catalyzing climate finance. The world is about $1.5 trillion short of the financing required each year to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. Why is climate finance not flowing at the pace and scale that is needed? One, the cost of capital is too high for transition projects in the global south. Two, the carbon price is too low. There are two key levers, therefore, to unlock the financing necessary for global decarbonization. Blended finance to address the cost of capital issue, and two, carbon credits to address the lack of a sufficient carbon price. And Singapore has therefore been focusing its efforts on both of these fronts. Let me start with blended finance. Using catalytic capital to absorb first loss from projects and thereby crowding in multiples of private commercial capital. Singapore has put in place, as you know, a blended finance platform called Financing Asia's Transition Partnership, or FASP, with a target fund size of 5 billion US dollars. The Singapore government pledged a grant of up to 500 million US dollars, half a billion US dollars, to be matched by other sources of concessional capital. The aim is to use this $1 billion of concessional capital to catalyze another $4 billion of commercial capital. We set up 3 funds under FASP: the Energy Transition Acceleration Finance Partnership, or ETAF, focused on replacing fossil fuel-based energy with renewables. The Green Investment Partnership, or GIP, focused on renewable energy, electric mobility, and waste and water management. The Industrial Transformation Infrastructure Program, or ITP, focuses on decarbonizing hard-to-abate sectors. And we appointed a reputable asset manager for each fund: Clifford Capital for ETAF, Peregrine for GIP, and BlackRock for ITP. Let me provide now the latest updates on FASP's progress. ETAF will now be structured into 2 distinct investment sleeves. One sleeve phasing out coal-fired power plants, and the other sleeve replacing existing or planned carbon-based energy sources with renewable energy. And Clifford Capital has been in active conversation with several regional banks and international capital providers to support the 2 sleeves of ETAF. GIP, as you've heard last month and again reiterated by Minister Grace Fu, had its first close of 510 million US dollars, has now committed of this amount $110 million, or more than 20%, to 3 sustainable infrastructure investments in South and Southeast Asia. The 3 investments, covering several projects across many countries, are expected to collectively reduce 1 million tons of emissions annually. ITP is broadening its coalition of catalytic capital providers and commercial investors, with partners such as Great Eastern also expressing intent to join the program. ITP will focus on providing debt financing to private sector borrowers seeking to decarbonize their businesses, including technology solutions for decarbonization like carbon removals, and projects in hard-to-abate sectors like cement and steel. The fund managers are here. They will provide further details at the panel discussion organized by the FASP office at 2 p.m. today. Next, carbon markets. Carbon markets help channel financing to decarbonization that would otherwise not occur. They provide a viable pathway for companies and countries to meet their emissions targets after they've exhausted their abatement potential. But the carbon markets suffer from a trust deficit, driven by a lack of clear and consistent guidance, concerns about the integrity of credits, and a fragmented market infrastructure. So Singapore is taking a comprehensive approach to address these multifaceted problems through domestic policies and international collaboration to address and scale carbon markets. First, Singapore issued last month guidance on how companies can integrate carbon markets into their decarbonization plans. It sets out for the first time clear guidelines on several things. 1, best practices for a credible decarbonization plan. 2, using credits only after prioritizing all feasible mitigation potential. 3, identifying high-quality carbon credits. 4, recommended disclosures on carbon credit use, including key identifying information such as project type and carbon registry. 5, the role of corresponding adjustments and vintage. And last, managing the risks of carbon credit projects under delivery. So it's a comprehensive end-to-end set of guidance on various aspects of integrating carbon credits into decarbonization plans. The second thing we did, and this is international partnership, the Coalition to Grow Carbon Markets, which Singapore co-chairs with Kenya and the United Kingdom, issued last week a set of shared principles on the corporate use of carbon credits. This is the first government-backed international framework that provides cross-jurisdictional guidance for credible corporate use of carbon credits. I'm pleased to announce that 10 national governments have endorsed these shared principles and that a few more countries have agreed to join the coalition. We will have a panel at 4 p.m. today here to announce these countries, more importantly, to discuss how we can use the shared principles to enhance corporate participation in the voluntary carbon market. Third, Singapore is sending strong demand signals with our own procurement of carbon credits to meet our 2030 NDC targets. We have contracted to purchase 2.175 million tons of Article 6 compliant nature-based carbon credits sourced from 4 carefully chosen projects in Ghana, Peru, and Paraguay, valued at around 76 million US Singapore dollars. So this Saturday on 15 November at 9:30 in the morning, we will feature these project developers as well as investors and buyers to share how high integrity nature-based credits can be better designed, financed, and scaled. I'm also pleased to announce that Singapore has now launched a new request for proposal for Article 6 compliant credits from both technology-based and nature-based projects. And we look forward to receiving new proposals and furthering cooperation with the 10 countries with which we have already signed implementation agreements. And to enhance the environmental integrity of the carbon credits that Singapore purchases, we have recently appointed 3 carbon rating service providers, B0 Carbon, Calix Global, and Silvera, to provide independent assessments of carbon credit methodologies and projects. Fourth, Singapore is facilitating international consensus on high-quality carbon credits to accelerate Asia's coal-to-clean transition. The Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS, convened 2 years ago, as you know, an international coalition called Traction to study how energy transition credits can be used as a financing mechanism to enable the managed phase-out of Asia's large and young coal fleet. Now, these are high-integrity credits generated from the emissions reduced through the early closure of coal plants. The design of these credits takes an inclusive approach that prioritizes energy reliability, accessibility, and affordability. I'm happy to report progress on 2 fronts. Traction will release today key findings from its final report, providing actionable insights for scaling the application of energy transition credits. Briefly, to summarize insights, 1, about 1/3 of the coal plant capacity across 15 Asian markets could be eligible to generate high integrity credits, potentially reducing emissions by up to 1 gigaton annually. That's 1 billion tons each year. 2, clear demand signals from credible off-takers, robust risk mitigation solutions, and alternative coal transition approaches can improve the bankability of coal phase-out projects. And 3, revenues from these carbon credits should go beyond short-term compensation of plant owners and help to build lasting community resilience through re-employment, upskilling, and business support programs. More details will be shared at the Traction Report launch and presentation on Wednesday, 12 November at 10 a.m. And MAS will release a statement of support from 21 public and private sector players for this new category of energy transition credits. They include financiers, corporates, and sovereigns, including the governments of Singapore and the Philippines. And they have come together to express early support for the development of energy transition credits, including the potential offtake of these credits. The signatories will also be present at the Traction program on Wednesday, 12 November. Staying the course on climate action means not just catalyzing finance for decarbonization, but also preparing well for what lies ahead, a climate-impaired world. Let me highlight 3 areas where Singapore is focusing its climate resilience efforts. First, we are rethinking coastal protection as an opportunity, not just a necessity. The Long Island project exemplifies this. It is a plan to build an 800-hectare island off the east coast of Singapore, which can deliver benefits beyond just protecting against rising sea levels. It includes a new water reservoir to strengthen water security, additional green and blue spaces for waterfront living, so there's a real estate play, and new recreational opportunities with around 20 kilometers of new waterfront parks. By twinning adaptation with socio-economic benefits, we can turn vulnerabilities into opportunities, realizing the full value of investments in adaptation. Second, we're ramping up heat resilience. I hope we do it faster. It's really hot. Under the worst case scenario, by the end of this century, Singapore is projected to experience daily maximum temperatures exceeding 35 degrees Celsius for more than 95% of days every year. This is according to the third National Climate Change Study, V3, that Minister Grace Fu mentioned, that was put up recently. Extreme heat events such as these will have implications for public health, labor productivity, and business operations. Singapore has developed national heat wave response plans for both the general public and sector-specific populations. Examples: opening up community cooling centers for the public to seek heat respite. Mandatory hourly rest breaks for outdoor workers engaging in heavy physical labor during high heat periods. And implementing dress-down attire in schools and preschools. We've already implemented that for Singapore Pavilion. Singapore is also taking a regional perspective to enhance our collective capacity for a heat-resilient Southeast Asia. The Global Heat Health Information Southeast Asia Hub at the National University of Singapore seeks to advance evidence-based policies for managing extreme heat risks in the region. The third part of our adaptation, I've mentioned coastal protection, heat resilience. We are strengthening our food supply resilience and exploring regional collaboration on this front. Climate change poses a serious threat to global food supplies. Rising temperatures, extreme weather events, and volatile precipitation patterns are already impacting crop yields significantly, especially in Asia. Singapore is particularly vulnerable to such disruptions as we import more than 90% of our food. Singapore is building an agri-food industry that is capable of growing food in a more productive and climate-resilient manner. The government recently awarded $22 million for a program to develop high-quality seeds with enhanced traits such as improved growth, yield, and nutritional value, specifically tailored for tropical climates. Singapore has initiated a study on the potential impacts of climate change on agricultural production in ASEAN and the measures that could be taken to mitigate these impacts. A concrete example of this regional approach is an initiative by Temasek Life Sciences Laboratory called Decarbonizing Rice. This project has shown early results from trials in Singapore and Tamil Nadu that climate-resilient rice varieties, improved water management, and enhanced soil microbiomes can reduce methane emissions and improve crop yields. The project is now scaling up trials across Laos, India, and Indonesia, demonstrating the potential for collaboration to enhance food security for our region. Next week, on 18th and 19th November, we'll have a series of programs to highlight Singapore's adaptation and resilience efforts and opportunities for regional collaborations. I said at the start that climate action is the necessary thing to do because we are part of a global community with commitments each of us has to make. It is the smart thing to do. There are huge opportunities in a carbon-constrained green economy of the future that those who move early will stand to reap. And it is the right thing to do. It is what we do as a moral imperative for our future generations and for the protection of our planet in future. Very few things in life checks all three boxes. So there you have why climate action is important, why Singapore is staying the course. And this can only be done together, as Minister Grace Fu mentioned. And this pavilion exemplifies that spirit of collaboration and collective action that are absolutely critical to the climate crisis. Whether through blended finance, carbon markets, or adaptation, it is only by working together across public and private sectors and across countries that we will stand a chance to secure a sustainable planet. Thank you very much and enjoy the Singapore Pavilion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. May I invite you to please remain on stage and take your position at the center of the launch pedestal as we prepare to officially open the Singapore Pavilion. I would like to also invite the following representatives to join Ambassador Menon on stage for the launch. May I invite Ms. Pham Wee Wei, Chairperson of the COP30 Singapore Pavilion, Mr. Joseph Teo, Chief Negotiator for Climate Change, Mr. Hugh Lim, Executive Director of the Centre for Livable Cities, and Ms. Abigail Ng, Chief Sustainability Officer of the Monetary Authority of Singapore. Each year, the Singapore Pavilion serves as a platform for collaboration and partnership, bringing together government, industry, and civil society to turn climate ambition into action. This year's theme, Interwoven Purpose, Regenerating Tomorrow, reminds us that real progress is achieved when we weave together our collective strengths and ideas to build a sustainable and resilient future. The launch mechanism before you features orchids, Singapore's national flower, and a symbol of resilience, partnership, and renewal. Each of our guests of honors is holding a handcrafted orchid. In a moment, they will each place their orchid onto the launch pedestal, symbolizing the official opening of the Singapore Pavilion. Ambassador Ms. Pham, Mr. Teo, Mr. Lim, and Ms. Ng, are we ready? At the count of 3, guests of honors, please place the orchids on the pedestal. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in counting down together. 3, 2, 1. And with that, the Singapore Pavilion at COP30 is officially open. May I invite our guest of honor to remain on stage for a group photograph to mark this special occasion. Thank you very much. May I invite our guests of honor to kindly return to your seats. Thank you once again, Ambassador Menon, Ms. Pham, Mr. Teo, Ms. Ng, and Mr. Lim, and thank you to all our partners and guests for joining us here today. We invite you to join us for our next session at 12 p.m. titled Powering Resilient Supply Chains Through Planetary Data, Finance, and Digital Climate Intelligence. This session will explore how AI, Earth observation, and fintech can enhance climate intelligence, strengthen resilience, and finance adaptation, highlighting Singapore's role in building digital and financial ecosystems for global climate action. We look forward to welcoming you back here to the Singapore Pavilion throughout COP30. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.